And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have a returning good brother, coming to us all the way from Polyhedra Games, previously here for Toku Legends, and now back to us with the urban fantasy mixed with dark occult affair known as Death City, the one and only Clipper Arnold. How you doing today, man?
So, thank you for the introduction. How are we doing? Well, I guess the audience doesn't know that we just spent the last hour talking about other tabletop RPGs.
Yep, including my own because I will always take the time to go into that. I'll give you props for not bringing up Fabula Ultima when talking about my system.
Oh yeah, I've seen a little bit of that. I haven't. I've seen a lot of bit of that. I haven't looked too deeply into it though.
Yeah.
I see it everywhere. It's hard to avoid. But,
well, especially given their current bestiary Kickstarter, but I've got a complicated attitude when it comes to that game. I'll tell you about that later. But getting to the with me it's always spicy. I mean I've already got some of the old school crowd that want to punch me in the face for having the gall to think that there's nothing wrong with bringing in elements of video games into TTRPGs.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of, that's kind of actually a big part of like some of the Polyhedra games design philosophy. So I'm with you there. I'd say.
So with Death City, you have referred to it as an urban occult kind of game, and maybe it's just me, but the vibe that I get just with a cursory glance is a lot of that concept of that I had called modern mythos, with some of those TV shows and comics back in the 90s of the supernatural didn't really go away. It just found different places to hide in, especially in modern cities.
Yep.
Is that kind of the vibe you're going with?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's the Death City origin is a very, very long story, so I'll try to just like condense it. But it's a project that I started a long time ago. I think the closest I can place it is about 2012, about when I was in college or just post college, and I was playing the first Shin Megami Tensei on like a Super Nintendo emulator with this like English fan translation, and I was watching Buffy and I was reading Hellboy comics, and my friend had lent me Dorohedoro, and so I was just really like immersed in that whole sort of atmosphere for a while, and there wasn't really anything that I felt at the time really like hit exactly what I was looking for in like a tabletop RPG that could capture all of those things. At least in the way that I would have liked to have seen it. Like, of course, Vampire is huge, and I have a lot of respect and appreciation for Vampire, and the World of Darkness stuff as well. But yeah, I don't know. I think I was just kind of looking for something different or wanting to do it in my own way or what have you, But yeah, as far as your question specifically, yeah, I think it's it's been a long time cooking, so some of these ideas have shifted quite a bit throughout over a decade. But I would say it probably plays at the idea that of like religion and mythology and ethics as this sort of like cultural imaginary, and that a lot of those symbols are just projected elements of like human consciousness, and you throw in the internet with that and it gets a lot of different fun and interesting dimensions to play with, and I don't know, I just think that's really fun because it's I guess like if you had to like TV tropes it or whatever, a lot of it is kind of like kitchen sink urban fantasy, right? Because especially with the way that we have it set up, we want people to be able to make and play whatever kinds of monsters or demons or supernatural entities that fit whatever their respective narrative that they're trying to tell is.
Yeah.
And I think there's just there's something sort of like uh, I don't know, like a cute little meta narrative there that we're projecting pre-existing projected, fantasies and philosophical concepts and cultural symbols and stuff like that. I mean, there's not to get too whatever, but a lot of people talk about tabletop RPGs as a sort of like Jungian discourse, and
Yeah.
it's this is that kind of like wrapped in more Jungian discourse, which is, I don't know, kind of fun and cute and
Yeah.
cool, I think.
Now, to narrow down that wide net, and I
Yeah,
think I've
sorry.
asked that. I think I've asked that this kind of thing a few times over the years. But what sort of media, whether it be video games, whether it be comic books, whether it be film, whatnot, that would be in Death City's Appendix N?
I actually have a list in the manuscript here, I believe. We could just read it off even. It's not
Yeah.
it's not called Appendix N, but
Yeah,
it
I
is.
just call
Yeah.
these kind of things Appendix N as a
I know.
is-
I get you.
yeah,
Um,
essentially as a catch-all. But
Sure.
yeah,
Um,
you do have the appendices. So what I'll do instead to kind of put a twist on that, especially since there's a lot of entries in that, is bring up a few that you have in the list, and sort of what elements in that made you want to put it in that influence list, or just some other comment regarding that. Think of it like the
mhm.
geekiest Rorschach test you'll ever take.
Yeah, I mean, Buffy is huge. I mean, I remember actually like, um, this would have been probably 2011, like sitting in my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, her like living room,
Mhm.
with her, like when we were all in college, and we were watching like all of Buffy at that point, and there were just certain like situations that felt very like tabletop RPG-esque. And sometimes when you're watching a piece of media like that, I don't know about you, but like you start mapping out like, okay, how would I set this up in a tabletop RPG environment? What kind of character is this? What kind of mechanical abilities do they have?
Mhm.
How would this and it was something like, I think it was like they were fighting on top of an RV, and there were like cars and crossbows
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
There is precedent
So
for that kind of thing in two ways. One, have you ever read the book Blowing Up the Movies?
no, I've heard the name though.
Uh, that was a book by Rob Laws that was kind of a companion of sorts to what he was already doing with the Feng Shui RPG, which was
Uh-huh.
all about taking various movies and going, okay, how could we do stuff in those movies in tabletop, or what sort of ideas could we steal from those movies?
Yeah, totally. I mean,
The
I had the same experience watching Fate of the Furious,
Yeah.
drunk on a few margaritas with my friends.
Uh,
That's how Justice Velocity happened. But
Yeah, and I think when I talked with you about Justice Velocity, I referenced the tea house scene in Hard Boiled.
yeah, classic scene, great scene.
But we did get a Buffyverse RPG a long ass time ago.
Different English version from
We
was
have
it
two. We have
Lion
two.
something. Yeah,
We have
and I've seen those. They're interesting.
Yeah,
They're
we-
very, Go ahead, sorry.
we have there are two there's the official one that got localized, and then there's a different one that has had a fan translation. The
Yeah,
official
the
one,
100X, I think is what
Oh,
it is. Is that the
Devil
one?
City Tokyo 200X.
200X. Okay, yeah, that's the one.
And
Yeah, I'm in that Discord actually.
yeah,
But
the latter is I suppose I could consider it a more advanced version, as it is focused more on the first two Shin Megami Tensei games, and a little bit of If, as opposed to Tokyo Conception, which is focused on Nocturne.
Nocturne, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Uh, Go ahead.
I think one of the other entries that I find interesting that's on this list is the Lost Boys, because I'm not sure if you know this, but the Lost Boys was instrumental in the chain of events that led to Vampire the Masquerade, and I
Oh,
have that on Word
yeah.
of God
Okay.
because I've
Yeah,
spoken
it's
with
sick.
because Mark Reinhagen outright told me like he had seen the Lost Boys for the first time, and then he started coming up with ideas as he was coming out of the theater.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see a couple punks with leather jackets and dangly earrings, and they're vampires, and you're like, yeah, this fucking makes sense. You
Like
know? Like,
also things like Daybreakers in here, which is a nice touch. I rarely hear anybody talk about Daybreakers. That was a really good movie.
I saw that recently, like a couple years ago. A friend of mine recommended it.
Hmm.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's other like vampire shit on here.
Hmm.
Devilman is cool. I put on some of the magical realism. So, Julio Cortázar short stories, 100 Years of Solitude.
Hmm.
A lot
Also,
of like
Constantine.
biblical stuff. Constantine is sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the
I
biblical stuff, we got Paradise Lost, Book
Mhm.
of Revelations, Dante's Inferno, Castlevania, Hellraiser.
Mhm.
Is Devil May Cry? Oh, Devil May Cry is up here.
Yeah.
Charmed, the first few seasons are pretty sick, but it kind of fell
It
off
can,
a
it
little
kind
bit,
of it kind
honestly.
of lost it kind of lost the plot. I'm pretty sure someone might look at the list and say, why is X-Files here? X-Files has dipped into the supernatural, um, especially since part of the whole dynamic is you have Mulder, who very much believes in, or at least wants to believe, um that these extra normal things exist, and you have Scully, who's coming into everything as a skeptic.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. I will also say Yu Yu Hakusho, I
mhm.
can't understate the influence that has had, not only on this game, but like on my life. It's probably my favorite anime of all time, quite
Yeah,
possibly. Definitely like top three.
yeah,
Um,
I can
but I
most definitely
Go
see.
ahead. Yeah, and I think, there's a lot of other stuff too. Like obviously these are, media related, but
Mhm.
I think in the introduction to this manuscript, which I don't know if you went through it, it goes a
I
lot like deep into the origin stories
Yeah.
of Death City. And like, at the time,
Mhm.
uh, I was like a young broke punk living with a bunch of other young broke punks, and everyone around me, you know, was in punk bands and smoked cigarettes and
Mhm.
like felt like the world was against them. And of course, that's how you end up with a fucking game like this. Like,
Mhm.
I think Yu Yu Hakusho, I watched it when I was a kid and I still love it. And I think a big part of what spoke to me about it was it's like, these kids who are, young and tough and they're in gangs and, they come from like broken homes and they have all these challenges and the world is just fucking against them. But, they're the ones who get put in this position to, save the world, right?
Yeah.
And they have like these hearts of gold and it's just, I don't know, there's something very endearing and like very, like a
There's
well concentrated emotional core around that I
yeah,
think is very,
there is a
moving and
recurring thing
fascinating.
I've seen in that, along with a lot of other works. It's a very Ishinomori kind of thing, and
Yeah,
that is one's origins not exactly defining them. Um,
right. Hmm.
like for for example, let's consider the big patient Zero with Ishinomori's work, Cyborg 009.
Hmm. Yeah.
You have the cast within that were supposed to be yet another group of cyborg soldiers under Black Ghost,
Yeah.
but ended up rejecting that and chose the more heroic route, despite their origins being not heroic. Um,
Yeah. I mean, technically, same for the original Common Rider as well. Although that arc is a split second, you know.
Well, the original Kamen Rider, what it's hard to talk about Kamen Rider without talking about the Skull Man.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
in fact, one of the original pitches was to try and do a live action take on Skullman, but Skullman was deemed too violent for that. Which, as somebody who's read the original manga, yeah, I can understand that completely. And but you do get the approach that we ended up having. And even if the story ended up ending a bit more tragically, you have a similar thing with Devilman, where
Yeah.
the origin of that hero is certainly a darker affair, but he's not succumbing to that. And
Hmm.
I suppose I could say the same thing with Spawn, though Spawn is more of a gothic tragedy. And I think it's wild that at one point Iced Earth was going to do the soundtrack for the movie.
That's funny.
That
We
didn't
got
happen.
Atari Teenage Riot in the movie though. That was fucking sick.
Yeah. So with a lot of the stuff when it came to the live action Spawn movie, you had a big reason things ended up the way that they did is you had a lot of people who were completely out of their depth. Like the director had never done a full directorial thing. He had only done music videos at that point. Which is understandable why somebody like that would be picked in the 90s, because there were a lot of music video turned film director stories in like the 80s. Things like Dark City.
Yeah, it's a very
City and
traditional
Highlander kind of had that.
pipeline.
Zack Snyder.
I
Was
love
how
the
he got his foot in the
90s.
door.
I love the 90s Spawn film. That's still like a great movie, honestly.
It
I
is.
mean, there's some of it's cheesy and some of the effects, don't quite hold up, but it's still a great movie, honestly.
What I do appreciate with that is as much as McFarlane is a self-admitted asshole by his own admission, a lot of his assholism is because of how much he wants to protect the overall idea of his designs.
I mean, it's his baby,
It very much is, and he grew up with these stories of say Jack Kirby getting screwed over by the industry, and his attitude was, "I'm going to fuck you before you can fuck me," and that led to his approach, because apparently a few years before he was approached by Columbia with the idea of selling off the film rights, but it would mean he didn't have creative control over the film, so he told Columbia to go fuck themselves. The way he describes it, he had said to them, "No, and get the hell out of my office."
Yeah.
But going away from that, I mainly bring that up just on a case of protecting that kind of thing and having that direction. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring, especially since you had some of the imagery from it in the manuscript, if I didn't bring up Blade, which I think for a whole generation that was their introduction to this modern mythos kind of dark fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, the Blade movies are fucking great. It's crazy how they never made a third one.
And I do remember someone asking me once, why is it so hard to do Blade without Snipes? It's largely because that version of Blade was made by him.
Yeah, I mean, he is that character. There's just no separating that.
Well,
I mean,
when I say a lot of it was made by him, I mean that very literally. Even going down to some of the character designs and even some of the weapon designs he did himself.
also just a callback, vampire designs were used on the mood board for Blade 1, and the artist on Vampire actually was brought on for 2 and credited and properly paid by Del Toro when 2 rolled around.
Yeah.
So.
And I know there's been attempts to try and follow up. There was that TV series that I only saw 1 or 2 episodes of, and it felt like somebody who only had the idea of the character. And there was the whole Marvel Madhouse project, which was a massive missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
they've been talking about that Blade reboot for like forever too. It's never gonna happen at this point. But...
Do you know how many writers have been involved on that project in one form or another?
Probably too many.
12.
You tell me. Yeah.
12 writers and 3 directors over the
Yeah.
and they still don't have a script.
I mean, the crazy thing about the Blade movies too was that they just reinvented that whole character like
pretty
in the
much.
90s, and they made it like its own fucking thing that's like still to this day very like influential, like genre defying. A lot of people talk about how it was like the first like actually successful like culturally relevant superhero movie, and you know, it came out of nowhere. It had a relatively low budget. No one wanted to bet on it because Blade wasn't an A-tier Marvel character even, and it's just, I don't know.
I'd say one of the other reasons no one
wanted.
I'd say the other reason no one wanted to bet on it is because of all the lingering bad blood that comic books in general had due to the speculator bubble, and especially Marvel after the bankruptcy case.
You're talking about in the 90s?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not as familiar with that part, perhaps.
When it comes to the Marvel bankruptcy, there were a lot of things that ended up happening. Chuck Sonnenberg has done a very good breakdown called The Rise and Fall of the Comic Empire, and how the speculator bubble in the mid-90s created a massive ripple effect. And at that particular... There was also the fact that the last couple times that Marvel had attempted to break into film was the Captain America movie, not the one you might be thinking of. The first
the
attempt.
canceled one.
No, not the one that it wasn't canceled. It came out. It was done by Canon Films, and the world wishes it wasn't. And the other one was the Punisher movie, the one that had Dolph Lundgren as the main guy.
I can't believe this actually came out. That's crazy. I've seen clips of this online. I didn't know that it actually... Yeah. That's really funny.
Both of those were massive bombs. And...
Yeah.
Canon Films had a forever clause in their rights. In their rights deal. Which did not make things easier. And... those particular failures, I think, was part of the reason people looked at it as a massive reach, especially given that the people involved were not exactly the top tier folk. Like David S. Goyer and the like were considered reaches at the time. And
also, not to get too... Go ahead.
New Line was not in a good place because they were still they were fumbling to try and find anything that was going to be as successful as the Freddy movies.
Yeah. I will say also, not to get too off topic here, but as far as like 90s superhero movies go, my hot take is that Batman and Robin and Batman Forever are actually great superhero movies. I know that's not a popular opinion, but those, I mean, they just go so fucking hard. Like,
you're in good company. I look at them as more of a victim of a production side that wanted their cake and wanted to eat it too. because after the backlash from Karens over, I realize the term Karen wasn't a thing yet, but that's basically what it was.
Over what?
Over
Nipples
Batman
on the bat suit?
No, over Batman Returns.
Okay.
Which I think is the reason why there's that one angry mom in Gremlins 2. It was probably somebody at Warner lashing out. The idea was make something more toyetic, but make something dark like the first movie that was successful. But I think Schumacher wanted to try and do something like the Dick Sprang era of the comics, which is the same era that the Adam West TV series was born out of. But you've got the director and producer having two different directions.
I mean, I think what a lot of people don't... I mean, I like Batman Returns as well, but I grew up with Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, and I had all the toys and stuff, and I think a lot of times people say that it's too cheesy, it's too campy, it's too colorful, etc., and it's just that's what's fucking great about it.
I've heard
it
that
actually
before.
is a comic book movie, you know? It's it's closer to professional wrestling than it is, what modern comic book movies are, which are, something else entirely.
I realize where I'm coming from because I often sound like it's a historian, but I think when it comes to that, it's important to look at the time frame, look at context.
Totally.
Because think about this. Those movies came out right around the same time as things like Batman the Animated Series. In the comics, you had the massive direction change post-Crisis, as well as stuff like The Killing Joke.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people developing this collective hallucination that the Silver Age never happened in the comics, which, just casually looking at a random comic in the Silver Age, it was wild. I refuse to believe nobody was on drugs during that time.
Yeah, that's true. And I think a lot of the modern defining era of Batman is more informed by the more gritty, dark realism and shit like that. But I don't know, man.
If you remember Brave and the Bold, they took the piss out of that thinking.
Yeah, I've only seen a few episodes of that, but I like what I've seen of that. Also, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Uma Thurman, this shit is so fucking sick, dude. I don't know.
Oh yeah. But
Ice to meet you, see you next fall. That shit
which
goes so
hard. I know some people rolled their eyes at that, but I'm that was exactly how Mr. Freeze was in the Adam West series.
Yeah, no, this shit is so fucking tight.
And I think it was a case of people collectively wanting to pretend that sort of silliness never existed, and got forcibly reminded, yeah, it did, and it was great.
Yeah, everyone just wants the crypto-fascist Frank Miller and Christopher Nolan interpretation of Batman, but
when it comes, I will go so far as to say I think Schumacher had a better understanding of Batman than Nolan did.
I mean, the Nolan films they're great for what they are. I disagree with them on a political level, but they're compelling cinema. I get what people like about them. I'm not that big of a hater.
Yeah, I'm not saying this as a hater, but more as Nolan spends a lot of time just trying to justify Batman in the name of realism, and it ends up being unrealistic for completely different reasons.
Yeah, it's also really funny how The Dark Knight is just a huge allegory for the Bush administration. It's just crazy.
So I think it caused long-term damage because a lot of people try to replicate that version of Joker, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, no.
But getting now one of the things that I am curious about, since Death City is very much using the same a lot of the core mechanics that are used in other polyhedral core entries like Justice Velocity and Nebula Chaos.
Mm-hmm.
But where would you say Death City diverges from those two, aside from genre?
Um, you know, they're very similar. They're all, I mean, just going back to the roots here. I mean, Death City was originally like the template for the polyhedra game system. And Justice Velocity was originally like a two-page notebook adaptation of the Death City rules. And so it's kind of like this thing where like uh, the rules themselves have been very like amorphous and adaptable. You know, it's a classless, raceless system. It's very like video gamey. A lot of it is meant to be these building blocks to build whatever kind of character you want in any particular setting. And they are all very like similar mechanically. I think obviously the big changes are, you know, adapting, you know, the rules and the language to the particular setting, you know, doing cosmetic variants, but also like building new and interesting items and abilities and traits and stuff like that that more fit within the world. And I mean, all these games borrow heavily from each other because they're all kind of in the same system. But yeah, you know, I think really with a lot of these, the approach is like, okay, let's take the meat and, you know, add and subtract whatever fits or whatever makes sense to best supplement, you know, the setting and the narrative as is appropriate. So like, you know, in Death City, a lot of it is like different types of spells and like elemental magic and you know, stuff like that. And you know, the character builds are more focused on like monsters rather than you know, like aliens in Nebula Chaos or whatever. And we just like give you the tools to sort of build something in the vein of what you would want to build to fit the setting and to fit the narrative that you're trying to tell. And we try to make that as like you know, like I said, it has a very video gamey, comic booky, anime-esque, like pulpy kind of bent to it. At least like design-wise and like in terms of how the rules are communicated. But also the advantage of that is we get to do kind of a lot more with a lot less in a way, you know, because it allows you to simplify certain things, but the rules still retain a relative degree of robustness and complexity, and you know, you can do a lot of things with it. So I don't know if that particularly answers your question, but I think also Death City is just probably a more, I don't know, like honestly, you don't see a lot of urban fantasy these days, at least not in the same way that it was hitting in the 90s. And I think it's just a weird, I think it's just a setting that's more, I don't know, like we talked about it a little bit earlier, like you know, all those influences I think closely approximate kind of the vibe that we're going for, you know, the black leather and the demons and the spikes and the spell casting and stuff like that. But you know, I've been playing this game for like close to, you know, 12, 13 years, something like that, you know? And it's just, to me at least, I know I'm very biased, but I don't, it doesn't, nothing really gives me the same sort of feeling as Death City does. Because it's like, I don't know, again, I don't want to be too far up my own asshole here or anything, but like, it just is a very unique setting, and I think a lot of it is informed by, you know, how long it's been cooking, and you know, my own personal relationship to it, and the relationship of me and my friends for like over a decade to it. It just makes it feel like something special in that regard, because it's not. You know, I feel like saying Yu Yu Hakusho meets Buffy meets Blade only like closely gives you a sort of resolution of it, but it's a combination of that history and the setting and the stories that I've shared with people over that time that I think just holds a special place in my heart and that I want to try to convey in a way that makes sense. And I think it is unique in that way because with like Justice Velocity, I think people have a lot more touchstones for what it can be or what it is.
Mhm.
There's a bunch of meat-headed action movies. There's a bunch of like fast cars, buff dudes, explosions. With Nebula Chaos, like everyone's seen Star Wars.
Mhm.
Um, Toku Legends is that draws from a very specific area as well. But I don't know. Death City is just it's just weird to me.
Yeah,
I think in a very comfortable and compelling way. I can only speak for myself, but
there
and
is.
the people who have played
Yeah,
it, of
there
course.
is
But
one game I can think of that I could draw, as far as tabletop games go, that I could draw parallels with, even though it's not a one-to-one. Are you familiar at all with Hell Knight?
oh yeah, yeah, I have a copy of it. I backed it on Kickstarter.
Hmm.
Uh, I have not played it, but yeah, I would say that it's coming from a similar place
Hmm.
at the very least. I'll say,
Yeah,
you know.
and Hell Knight is more Doom Biker, but both of them can kind of be summarized in a genre that's described in one word, and that is giallo.
Yeah, you got me there. I'm not overly familiar with giallo cinema. Uh,
Giallo predates cinema. It got started in the pulp days um, of fiction in Italy. The reason it has
mhm.
that is because a lot of mystery and horror novels and short stories had these yellow covers, because giallo is based on the Italian
Yellow.
word for yellow, gialla,
Oh,
and
interesting. Okay.
that would carry over into film, uh,
Uh-huh.
especially with guys like Lucio Fulci, who has the nickname the Godfather of Gore, uh, and some of his various works, a lot of which are considered kind of the poster child for those sorts of horror. And
Hmm.
I'm not averse to the chunky salsa, but the way he did it, um, even nowadays, even nowadays, it veers a little bit. It can veer a little bit close to the line. Like it's certainly not something I'm plopping in front of a rookie when it comes to horror.
Yeah. It's interesting though because um like I think Death City has horror elements, but I don't think at its core that it is a particularly horror-oriented game necessarily.
Yeah, that's why I brought
Uh,
up death. But the big reason I bring up Jalo is not necessarily for horror, but in the sense of being very pulpy.
yeah, like kind of the Gonzo
Hmm.
type of approach. Yeah.
And
Uh,
Hell Knight describes itself as a doesn't describe itself as a horror RPG, but a Doom biker RPG.
yeah.
And because of that, there's a lot of stuff you can take with that kind of pulpy, that kind of Gonzo sort of style, and interpret it in a bunch of different directions. Which it sounds to me that you kept to kind of put a bit of a control on that wide net. That's why you have um, it looks like it looks like you plan on doing the titular Death City as its own location with its own identity.
Yep.
Sort of like the relationship that Cyberpunk has with Night City.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate, I would say.
Hmm.
I mean, that's just where cuz it's urban fantasy, right?
Hmm.
Emphasis on urban, like the idea is right that you're fighting demons in like warehouses and abandoned subway stations and, you know, underground sewers. You're going to the pawn shop to buy demon swords off of a guy who knows a guy. Like you're going to like secret demon bars that are like hidden in like a pocket portal behind a dark alley and like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very it's a weird game too because like you know how tabletop RPGs go that as much as the posturing gets in the way where you tell people this is like really cool and brooding and stylish or whatever, when you get it at the table it just becomes a fucking romp. Like
I say
partially by
embrace that.
design. No, exactly. No, that's part of the fun, and like it's really fun to see that translate because like when we first ran it, it was like my younger brother Dean, he wanted to be a half demon martial artist. And then, we had another person who was playing John Stamos fan 54, who was a hacker cyber lord. And, at one point I had someone who wanted to play an aquatic elf. I was like, sure, we can give you the abilities to do that. And there was like, a knight who traveled from the past. There was like an android lady who wanted to be human. In our recent playtests, there was like this club kid with light and dark magic tattoos that let you do light and dark energy blasts. And there was one of my friend Jahan played a character. Jahan actually did a lot of the design for this as well. But they played a character named Brat, who was like a beat poet inspired by Richard Brautigan. But they were a half vampire butcher who lost their love to like a vampire or something like that. And my friend Devin played a character named Josh, who was some like dorky otaku who like was on an image board one day and invited some like demon to like partially possess him, and he's like a flame samurai dude now or something. Like, I don't know, it just goes really weird and interesting places. Oh, my friend Dan played a character called Dan Hellising, who's like a descendant of Dan Hellising, and he it is, of course, follows the family lineage and is a vampire hunter, and he has like a crossbow, and he has a cane that he trips people with, and he has like a long black trench coat and stuff like that. And I don't know, it's I mean, I go into this in more detail in the book, but it's just wacky and fun, and like I have a lot of fond memories of fighting these like bosses on like rooftops of 100-story buildings while the rain stands still. And one group, like, in order to save their friend, they went to the heart of Death City and they opened a portal to hell so that they could go in and save one of the NPCs who had died. And so then they're traversing through various layers of hell. I don't know, it's a lot of fun.
I remember playing around with the Monster Hunters in an urban environment right when DoorDash started to become a thing, where where you had a lot of people from different backgrounds who were working for what was effectively a monster hunting guild. Once they apply, they get a certain app that would alert them if there was a job for clearing out in a particular area, and it was kind of framed the way, say, Exterminator.
Ghostbusters type of thing.
Yeah, where there's
also a very anime setup, monster hunting guild.
The idea being it's up for say there's a vampire infestation that in this particular area, and it's basically you get a certain amount of money per head. You find the head vampire, you get more money. So bounty hunting, but in order to actually get credit, you have to cut the head off and take a photo of it. And it did result in one of my players finding a way to knit to be a bit of a sneaky bastard about it, where he'd have a drone take a photo right after the head was cut off, so that as far as the system was concerned, he was the one who got credit. But just those sort of things of playing with that concept. I've seen some say that post 90s you can't do a whole lot with that urban fantasy concept because so much of it has been overexposed. But with changes in technology, I think there is still room to explore.
Oh, totally. I mean, Shin Megami Tensei does it.
Yeah,
You know, Persona does it. I think if you're doing it right, I think a digitally connected world can be really, rife imagery for stuff like this.
Yeah. I've seen some say that because of the pervasiveness of the digital world that you couldn't do that same kind of mystery. I'm like, no, you still can, because things like dark webs still exist now, and there are still the more hidden spots of the internet that isn't the places angels fear to tread. Plus,
Yeah,
there's plenty of people who go around looking for lost info on the net, even now.
yeah, totally. And I mean, like, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before.
Mhm.
Not to get too heady, but there's that line in Paprika, the Satoshi Kon film,
Mhm.
where they talk about how dreams and the internet are actually very similar because they're manifestations of the unconscious mind or what have you.
Mhm.
And I feel like that imagery is, I mean, that's literally the whole impetus behind Shin Megami Tensei, like especially the first one. Like, is which is very much like uh plays on those themes of like intersection between digital
Yeah, that.
environments and urban environments, and projections of like human stories and mythos and images and
Mhm.
subconscious.
I
Or
think the
not, I don't want
reason.
to use the term subconscious here
Yeah.
too liberally, because that has very specific technical meaning, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and I think the reason some people are hesitant to that is kind of the same reason that some stuff like cyberpunk is stuck in 1980s style futurism. This idea,
Well, that's
it's
that's a whole different.
well, it is yes and no. It's a lot of there's a concept that I've talked about on this channel called design by gospel. We do things a certain way because we've always done things a certain way.
Uh-huh.
And one of the big cases with that is this idea of let's use fantasy as an example. This idea that if you're doing a fantasy story, you have to be drawing upon that same Western European pastiche and
Yeah, you need to
the Tolkien
reinvent
melting pot.
Tolkien. Sure. Yeah.
And that precludes the idea of using other styles of fantasy, other pulpy styles, be for reasons that never really make sense. And the argument has always been, well, that's the traditional approach to doing fantasy, and to which the natural reply is, well, yeah, but that doesn't explain why I have to do it that way.
Yeah, I mean that's the impetus behind a lot of creative endeavors. Like that's why Elric fucking kicks ass, is because it subverts
and
that whole like Tolkien mythos that everyone's repeating ad nauseum.
Elric,
So
I'd say, is more of an anti-Conan than an anti-Tolkien.
I mean, he's kind of his own thing in a way.
Yeah.
But
It very
you know,
much is. So I suppose another example I'd use that's definitely closer to the mark is Record of Lodos War. Especially,
Yeah, that shit kicks ass.
I've been reading the fan translations of a lot of the novels that I've been able to get,
No,
and I
you haven't.
did. Hmm?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You're so real for that. That's crazy.
And the stuff that we got in the two animes is actually the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Lodos.
Oh, I'm
Yes,
sure.
Lodos has
Yeah.
the D&D connection, but the world that Lodos has developed, I don't think you could really run that in any version of D&D because it's diverged so much by the time you get to those novels.
No, yeah. That's why they got Sword World, you know. Well, that's not why. They
No,
did that for
not
IP
exactly.
specific reasons.
Awkward has talked at length about that. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think the real challenge with Cyberpunk
mhm,
is it seems I wrote a whole thesis on this a
mhm.
long time ago. It's 50 pages and from like 2013. I can send it to you sometime if you're interested. It's not my best work because I wrote it when I was like 22 or something, but I I think a lot of the challenge that Cyberpunk has had in the past decade is it's just not fucking cool or edgy or subversive anymore. And people are just going back to that well, in the same way that you're describing people go reinventing Tolkien ad nauseum. It's like we can only do so much with fucking,
Yeah,
neon kanji in the rain
that
and
is
still like pass that off as cyberpunk. It's just become very Redditified,
that is
unfortunately.
that is
Like,
that is why I say a lot of that it comes from this assumption that Cyberpunk has to be using that 80s approach when there's
exactly.
well,
Yeah,
there, or rather I should say futurism um circa the 1980s.
that's
Because
correct. Yeah.
like I think of the whole corporate overlord part of Cyberpunk, and then I think of what was going on in the 80s at the time, and one of the big things was the corporate raider problem in the financial world. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
And
got,
some of that shit just doesn't even hold. Like the Zaibatsu, who's worried about that right now? Like, I don't know.
uh, and then I think of certain things like cloud computing that have become more and more of a thing nowadays, or the fact
Yeah.
that the perception of prosthetics now compared
Okay,
now
you know who does this really well? Like this in particular?
who
Fucking Digimon. And
Surprise,
also Shin
motherfucker.
Megami Tensei.
oh yeah
Uh, and even like Snow Crash. Okay, Snow Crash has some problems, I'll say, but like I feel like Snow Crash is just like it's so wacky and absurd and over the top, and for some of those reasons is so much more
Mhm.
prescient than some of even the more seminal works of cyberpunk fiction.
um
Um,
do you know
in
where a
that
lot of
regard.
that cyberpunk terminology that Gibson was doing really came from?
I'm sure I do, but please give me the cheat code.
Him being a tweaker in the Toronto
In
drug
New
and club
York,
scene
yeah,
back in the 70s.
yeah, sure. No, yeah, that makes sense.
It makes sense, but it also completely kills the mythos whenever I bring that up. Uh,
I mean, I like Gibson. He's. I don't want to. I don't want to get into this.
yeah,
I have a lot of complex feelings on Gibson, I
yeah.
guess. But generally
Mhm.
speaking, you know, he has a very unique and peculiar and influential and defining style. Um, uh,
Yeah.
I like
Mhm.
what I'll say is I do think he lost a bit of his edge over time, but that's just me. Who
Yeah.
knows?
But now with all that said, I know we focused more on the broader concepts than on the crunch, but a lot if I focused on the crunch at the same level as I did before, I'd be revisiting things that I'd already talked about with previous entries.
Hmm.
But what are you shooting for as far as a page count for Death City?
I don't know, probably like 100 pages. that seems to be about where we're at with Justice Velocity and Nebula Chaos and all that. So
Yeah, I could.
it'll be thin. I will say that we are doing like what is it, 5.5 by 8.5. So it'll be, book sized, manga sized instead of the lay flat, 8.5 by 11 format. Which I don't know who gives a shit about this, but the conventional wisdom used to be that tabletop RPGs are really, as much as they have pretty pictures and are cool to look at, are fundamentally textbooks and are built to lay flat when you open them so that you can get a better look at the tables and stuff like that. But I think that particular physical utility is perhaps not so relevant anymore or as important. Like there are plenty of books that do this size format, and a lot of people use PDFs anyway, and I've used books in that format and never found it particularly prohibitive that it doesn't lay flat. So and I think it's just cooler, it's more potable. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know who actually cares about that, but just to give a tangential context to the question that you're asking.
Yeah, and when it comes to the textbook thing, you pretty much just perfectly described why why Traveler 5 didn't stick with me, as opposed to Mongoose Traveler.
Yeah, because it is very much a textbook. You mean?
When I read through Traveler 5 for a review, which I consider my most unprofessional review because of how I just completely snapped. I said it read like your car's owner's manual that you don't read.
Yeah.
Or like that giant manual for a graphing calculator I had in high school. Most of which I didn't read and had a bunch of stuff nobody uses. That was the vibe I got with it. There wasn't that ease of access for information.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as they are textbooks, I have, through Morkborg and a few other processes, I have seen a design shift towards more of a magazine look.
Yeah, I mean, Morkborg, there's just no way of getting around how influential that's been in
Well, it almost won a graphic design award in Sweden. I don't know if it won, but it was nominated for it.
It should have won a few. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think pre-Morkborg anyone had ever seen anything quite like that.
There's been leanings into it. I know that during the development process of D&D 4th edition, the edition I'm supposed to hate, but I don't. They had said that they wanted to go with a magazine-like look. 3rd edition had this look of trying to be an in-universe book, which was a neat attempt, but it was kind of messy. And you've had even my own work. We were trying to go for more of a strategy guide look.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, the things like the Ultimania strategy guides that were, for the longest time, Japan exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I feel like 2-column layout works. It's completely fine, and it's very readable, especially when you have dense text.
Mm-hmm.
But you see stuff like Morkborg that just like bucks a lot of that very completely, and you can't help but ask, like, okay, can we do a few pages with some interesting layouts, you know? And I think that's been great for pushing specifically layout design and art direction in tabletop RPGs. And I think 2-column layout is also still fine. Like we did a 2-column layout in Nebula Chaos. There's still like some pages that have more interesting layouts than others, but I don't know. I think overall, it's a beautiful book to look at. It's a and I think that, I don't know, just bring some fucking guts back into tabletop RPG design for whatever, if people are love or hate Mork Borg. I think that that was, a cool thing
Yeah.
to do, I'll say,
Oh. And I look back at the only kind of column setup that I've seen I saw a few people try in the 2000s and it didn't stick, and I'm glad it didn't, is 3-column.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I mean, it's fine. I mean, we're just talking about how, density of text versus information conveyed. There's certain versions of the Bible that are 3-column, I think. I don't know.
The Decipher games did a 3-column format, and it was kind of janky. As much as I liked Decipher Lord of the Rings and Star Trek, that was certainly an issue. If I'd like to see somebody revisit the coda system from those games in a more cleaned up format. But there's no open license for them because of various reasons and what ended up happening with Decipher, which is a damn tragedy. But with that in mind, as far as a release window for at the very least the PDF version, what would you be shooting for? I know it says June 2026 on the Kickstarter page.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Hopefully the PDF will be before that, but it's how Kickstarters go. There's a lot of unforeseen challenges. I think the PDF will try to get to everyone as soon as it's done, but I think pretty much everything on there is just set for June so that we can get everything shipped and out to backers around the same time. I mean, the PDF will certainly go out first. I was actually going to bring this up as well. I mean, obviously, a lot of the layout has not been done just yet. You can look at some of the sample spreads, which is kind of our unifying direction for how the game will be. But I mean, it still kind of remains to be seen how much of it will be 2-column and how much of it will be bespokely designed. Like I said, my friend Jahan has been working on some of the design and the layout for this, and looking at the manuscript, there's some dense text there. I'm not gonna say we're not gonna do 2-column layouts or anything like that, but I think this will be an interesting design synthesis between the stuff that you see on the page, which is ideally what the final layout will look like, as well as trying to convey information with like dense text in a relatively like clear and concise and readable fashion and whatnot. But I think this will probably be one of the more designed products that we've put out, with perhaps the exception of our Mork Borg Adventure module, which I personally did the entire layout for. But I mean, this challenge for this project has been really interesting, because usually the way that this works is I'll write out, a good chunk, if not the majority of the manuscript, and then I'll put together an art brief, and then I'll talk to an artist and I'll say, hey, can you give me a picture of an alien swinging a lightsaber? And in the next one, can you give me XYZ, and can you give it to me at these dimensions with these colors, etc., etc. I didn't really do that this time. We did a lot of searching. So Kat, my friend Kat Kotaka, is the illustrator on the project, and my friend Jahan is the designer on the project. But I also have some art sensibilities, and I make a bunch of punk flyers. I did the cover for this. There's like points where we all had Photoshop open and we were all trying different techniques, trying to figure out how to make some of these images or some of these designs work and stuff like that. And it's been a very fun environment, because like for the first few months even, we were just talking about like the design like what the game is, what the aesthetics were, what elements we want to pull together for it. You know, there's like the cyber element, there's like the urban element, there's, you know, the occult and supernatural element, and you know, a lot of those decisions were sort of a process that we arrived at through you know, reviewing a lot of reference, like making shared Pinterest boards, like dumping a bunch of shit on you know, our respective Discord channels, etc. And you know, it's been like a fun process, and it's a process that I think will yield a pretty fucking cool and pretty interestingly designed game, like from an aesthetic standpoint, particularly, because you know, there's certain challenges to that, obviously. Like, there's times where we get caught in the weeds trying to figure out, you know, trying to crack the exact design sauce that we want to execute on, and you know, we'll be doing open crit, where we'll be nitpicking, you know, the outline texture that we're using, and we're trying different outline textures and so on and so forth. But I think ultimately, like, it will probably be the most labored over aesthetically designed Polyhedry Games product that we've put out thus far, in a lot of ways. Not to undersell the rest of our catalog, but I think it's just a different approach, you know.
Yeah, just
so
being more comfortable with the tool set with time is something that's just gonna happen naturally.
Well, I think also, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, it's a very much more collaborative design environment than I've previously done. Like with Toku Legends, for example, like, I wrote the manuscript. I had, you know, I wrote up Corey Lewis an art brief. He put together a bunch of cool shit. I gave that to Jahan, and I said, hey, can you make a design that matches Corey's style? Here's some of Corey's other shit. And then Jahan said, cool. And it was like, you know, bing, bang, boom, one fell swoop. And this has been not one fell swoop. It's been it's been very much a search. It's been figuring out what the game is visually and trying to put together like a design language to visually convey that. And it's been, you know, like I said, a collaboration. Like, I'm not just handing this off to Jahan. Jahan's sitting there, and we're all doing crit, and we're evaluating mood boards and trying to figure out what the visual artistic shorthand is to best convey like what this game is and what it means. So, you know, it's been fun.
Yeah.
It's been a challenge. I will say one shortcoming of the approach is having 3 designers is sometimes, you know, too many cooks. But I think overall it's been really fun and gratifying and just really fulfilling, you know, to be in a collaborative, creative environment like that, and everyone's sharing, you know, their own knowledge and experience and techniques, and they have their own insights and everything like that. So it's been really cool, you know.
Yeah, I can certainly get that, and I will be looking forward to seeing how it develops. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my monastery and enjoy the madness here once again.
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely, anytime. It's always a pleasure. We go places here at the monastery that a lot of places don't go, or I don't know. Sorry, I enjoy our conversation, is what I'm trying to say. And thank you so much for having me. And I think I said this off stream, but I do want to make sure I say it on stream, that I really appreciate you for creating a platform for people who are, you know, weird mutant tabletop RPG freaks. And it's nice to talk to, you know, someone who speaks the same language and someone who's interested in, like, really just the raw, like, meat and bones of the hobby and the creativity that goes into that, and coming at it from a variety of angles, you know. is really appreciated. So
Mhm.
always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
心底。